I'm Cheryl Milson, you probably saw somewhere, and I'm co-founder of a company, and we're sort of half based locally. We're officially based in Mechanicsburg, but I'm here in East Stroudsburg, called Catapult Performance Technologies. So I'll tell you a teeny about myself, and it'll make more sense how I ended up here. So I think my whole life I was interested in optimization, in how do you get stuff to be as good as it can be. And there's a couple of you in this room that know my dad, and he was really the person that I think introduced that concept to me and got me thinking about it, because from birth, or as early on as I can remember, it's not that he wasn't encouraging and he didn't tell us when we were doing a good job, but his motto was always, good is the enemy of best. Like somebody says you did a good job, and he'd be like, that's good, but don't let it be the enemy of best. Don't let it be the enemy of best. So I always had this sense in my mind that there was never, that like the end of the road in terms of perfection was unobtainium, and I still do. So that's why my cell phone's in the car, for those of you who are in the room when I said that, because I'm working on not, and it's a challenge, which is funny because it wasn't even like something I grew up with. But so when I was moving along in school and trying to figure out what to do, I had several majors in college. So if you've changed your major, don't let it bother you. It's not that big of a deal. And then I actually ended up with my undergrad degree with a degree in exercise science and health promotion. And that was pretty interesting because I was working with people on their performance. I was lucky enough to work with some pretty high-level athletes, one or two elite athletes. And it was that same kind of thing. Like that was, moving up towards ultimate performance, moving up towards ultimate performance. What does that mean? We'd measure, we'd assess, we'd do the optimization training, and so on and so forth. So that was always interesting. I went to grad school for like effectively the same thing. And then I randomly got involved with some different businesses and some different people where they too were looking at performance optimization, but it was largely around process optimization. It was less about people optimization. And it was, I didn't think of it at the time that I had always been involved in optimization. It was kind of just like what I was doing. But as I started to think about, it's funny, when you get older, you start to reflect more on like what you've done. I was kind of like, well, it's so interesting. I've always kind of been this good is the enemy of best. How can we make something better or even best? So my last career before this one, I was in the field of corporate wellness. And that was really interesting because my full-time job as corporate wellness officer of a relatively local company was teach people how to be healthy, teach them a healthy lifestyle. And one reason was to contain healthcare costs, no doubt. But another reason was to optimize their performance, or so we all believed, and I still do, because who's ever been sick and had to go to work or school, right? Sucks, terrible thing. Like you're there, but you're not completely there, and is your performance optimal? I know for me, I'd have to say no. Now I tend to stay home because I don't like to be out in the world at too mid-pack performing if I don't have to. So the difficulty that I always ran into with corporate wellness was the executive team would be like, what's the return on investment? What's the return on investment, above and beyond healthcare? And anecdotally, we know that when people feel better and their bodies are working better and everything, and their stress is managed, which is huge, so write that down, their stress is managed, because that's the number one thing in my mind why people don't perform well, kind of ultimately. I couldn't say, if Bill takes a walk tomorrow and then today he eats an apple, he's going to be the highest performer in your organization. It was just too wide of a gap. And it used to drive me crazy because they would really want to know, the very specific return on investment quantified in that way, and it was impossible to quantify. So I happenstance got out of that field, or not that I don't still love it, but I was looking for something to do. And I really started thinking a lot about what really makes people high performers. Like, what is it? Because the eating the apple and the walk, that's awesome. but I'm pretty sure it's not that. Well, into this, luckily I had the luxury of being out of work for a while and to really think about what my next move was. My boss's boss from that corporate wellness company called me and he asked me to start another wellness business with him. He had since left. And I was like, Steve, no way. Like, I love the field, but I'm not convinced that we can show a return on investment the way people are expecting. And I really have been thinking a lot about performance optimization, what drives that, and I don't think it's that. So he said to me, well, what do you think it is? And I said, I've been looking at a lot of models, emotional intelligence, a lot of conversation around that. Something that you guys have all heard of, I'm sure, and you're only gonna ever hear me say it once, because I think it's the worst name ever, but soft skills, which are like some of the most important skills you can have. So why they're called soft, I can't wrap my mind around. Come on in, guys. And hey. And so we started to really do some research into the whole thing, and we found out some really cool stuff. And then we'll move right along to the skills. But this is good to know. So first of all, who in here wants to be a high performer? Right. If you don't, we're gonna have an issue. And the good news is I know you do, or you wouldn't be here, right? And that's kind of the funny thing out in the world about self-development, because basically this whole thing is about developing yourself. High performers will always engage in self-development because we're lifelong learners. We know good is the enemy of best. We know there's more to learn and stuff. More mid-pack people typically won't unless they're forced to. There's a company initiative or there's other reasons why they have to. So it's an interesting thing because exactly the wrong people show up for these talks, but I'm really glad you're here. But I think if I wasn't, explaining this to you and stuff, somehow you would be out in the world figuring out how do I get better at what I do. So this was the number that blew my mind, 85%. As it turns out, 85% of success is predicted by the skills we're going to talk about today and related skills. We have a model we call the Catapult 20, which is the 20 skills. It's not exhaustive by any means. It's just the ones that when we pulled from leadership skills and we pulled from emotional intelligence skills and we pulled from those other skills, that's the opposite of hard, we decided that those were the 20 that it seemed to deserve the most focus. But you'll hear different models and stuff, and basically I would say they're all right. So if 85% of success is predicted by these types of skills, and the right word for them in my mind is transferable, because you can transfer these skills to anywhere in your life and there is no downside. They'll always benefit you. The stuff we're going to talk about today, you can transfer them to your personal life and you'll become a better spouse, you'll become a better friend, you'll become a better team player. You can transfer them to your professional life and you'll become a better employee or a better leader or a better manager, whatever, better student for sure. So transferable skills, now we never have to say the opposite of hard skills again. So it turns out, obviously, if 85% of success is predicted by these skills, then 15% of success is predicted by the hard skills or technical skills. Now, don't quit school tomorrow, kids. You still absolutely need to know the technical skills, what you're doing. Because I always say to people, imagine going to a doctor and they don't really know how to be a doctor, but they're great at this. Sorry, like I'm not using them. So remember that your technical skills that's baseline. Like if you don't have those, you can't do what you do. But they're not a differentiator. They don't give you a competitive advantage. They will, like this much. I mean, we all know some people are just really exceptional at technically what they do, and that's great. But I've worked, been out in the workforce for years and years and years, and I've run into people who are amazing technicians at whatever they do. Maybe they're a great accountant or they're a great IT person or this and that. And they're so incredibly hard to work with that if they came to work for me after a period of time, I would invite them to go seek other opportunities. So if you ever check out my LinkedIn page, my personal LinkedIn page, several articles ago, there's a quadrant that was made. I can't say some of the words in the room, but it's a very true and kind of funny article. But it shows, people with these skills versus technical. And, you like the bottom left is you don't know anything and you're a real jerk. And the top is you're technically amazing and your transferable skills are really amplified. So obviously that's the optimal person. So this was interesting to me. The other interesting thing to me was when, I think it's, if I remember right in my mind, because I walk around with a lot of statistics, I read constantly. Thank goodness for the internet if you don't let it distract you to the point of you do nothing else in your life, right? I think over 1,000 companies were surveyed. And this is really important for you guys who are just getting out into the workforce. At the 18-month mark, so 18 months into hire, 49% of the time, the hiring managers said they would not hire the same people again, a second time. Half the time they made the wrong hire. Like if you own a business, that's your worst nightmare. And the reason was because of this. People came in, they went to Harvard, their resume was incredible, they had great experience. But you can't really tell in an hour or two of interviewing, maybe even you have 3, 4, 5 hours of interviewing, whether or not somebody really has this stuff kind of until you start working with them and you're in the kind of day-to-day and you start to see what happens. And half the time they felt like they made the wrong choice. That's staggering to me, which says we still don't have a really good way of knowing pretty quickly whether or not people have this stuff. So, okay, time for the game. Is Liz Klein here, by the way? She was the speaker from last time. I'm sorry she's not here. She did a great job. Oh, I'll thank her another time. She got me thinking about something great. Okay, so we'll let Robert and his friend be on the same team. So from Miss Animal Print over, it's nice to see you. You guys are Team B and you guys will be Team A. All right? And the letters mean nothing, so don't panic. Okay, so what I would love is if Keith could come up and keep score for me. All right? So we'll just do like a little matrix and we'll have 1, 2, and so on. And I will write down your brilliant ideas. How come this stuff never actually works? Ah, now it does. Ha-ha. That is really, really good. It's leaking a little bit. Hey, okay, now here we go. You ever go to those dry erase boards and it has the stuff from last time and you can't get it off? That happens to me way too often. Okay, so you have 10 seconds, Team A, and you can raise your hand, yell it out, whatever, and then we're going to go to B. It's almost going to be like my own personal HQ. Feeling good about this. All right? So, Team A, give me one of the high-performance skills. Yeah, okay, no. And if you get it wrong, we'll go right over to the other team. Team B, give me something. Communication. Yes. Okay, there's 1. Team B gets a 1. Okay, Team A, come on, let's get with it here. Team A.
Listening.
Okay, part of communication, but okay, Team B.
Empathy.
Ah, excellent, excellent. Not everyone guesses that one. Empathy. Okay, come on, Team A. Team A.
Diplomacy.
A great one, not on our 20. Good guess, though. Okay, B, you're killing them. B.
Leadership.
A whole bunch of these are part of leadership, but no. Healthy lifestyle. Haha, from my friend the chiropractor. That is really true because I just tried to give you guys the big hint saying if you don't feel good, you will not be able to perform, particularly around stress management, but everything counts. B.
Positive attitude.
Optimism. Let's call it that. Great. Okay, you guys are doing a lot better than some of the groups. All right, A, you're still in the game.
Organization.
Good one, not on our list. But I like your tenacity. He just keeps coming out with them. That is no fear right there. All right, come on.
I was going to say the word tenacity.
Is there anything like resilience? Let's call it that. Close enough. All right, we're getting there. We got 5. I mean, I don't know if we get 25%. A. Creativity. A great one, and I agree, but not on our list. B.
How about trustworthiness?
Yes, I think we kind of have that under responsibility and accountability. Very good. It'd be nice if I knew my own skills, right? So we can call that accountability too. Because, it's terrible when you give somebody some responsibility and they don't do it. Then they're not trustworthy. Okay, where are we at? A? Game's almost over, folks. We're on a limited time basis here. Is it A's turn? A? We got responsible. B? Okay, let me give you a hint, because this gets a little trickier. Think about, like you went to the career expo today, and it was like a little scary, and you had to go talk to people. Self-confidence. That was such a big hint. I'll give you guys a hint, don't worry. All right, we're almost there. This pen is terrible. Can you guys see this at all? The good news is I'm going to give you a list of these at the end, so you won't have to remember. And I don't usually deal a ton with paper because I sort of am environmental, but I feel like the list of this stuff is worth putting up somewhere where you look at it every single day, because clearly this is not top of mind for you guys. So it tells us something. All right, so self-confidence came from A. Yeah, I'm supposed to give a hint. Okay, A. Okay, trustworthiness falls into two categories for us. This one, and then we actually have another skill set that plays into trustworthiness. And there's a second definition. Definition 2 of it means very consistent behavior. And any of you guys in IT might have a good clue. Starts with an I. I like supportive, but it's not that. The word we were looking for was integrity. Anybody here work with data integrity? All right, well, you will, believe me. All right, so we relatively close? No. B, you killed it. Round of applause for B. All right, enough of the guessing. Okay, so, but like reasonably on the right track. So let me give you the rest. Okay, I need to, you know what? I actually quiz myself once a day. This is a funny story, to make sure I know these, right? So the other day, quizzed myself, made the paper I'm going to give you guys today. And then I sent it to my business partner, who I love and who would kill me for telling you this. And I kind of did my own creative thing, and he comes back to me and he's like, we talked about brand consistency, blah, blah, blah. I get in these moods and I want a lot of colors and I want it to be in a really funky shape. And he was like, we talked about brand consistency, we have to use the original list, blah, blah, blah. I'm very, anal about this, or OCD. And he sends me this list and I send it to these guys to print for me. And Keith emails me this morning and texts me this morning and says, Zach looked at your list. There's 19 skill sets on it. So of course, I had to immediately call my business partner and say, hey, just got a call from the university. Guess what? In your very OCD and anal way, you missed one of the skill sets. I'm not sure we're talking yet, but we will be eventually. So, okay. A biggie. Well,
You frustrated about his responsibilities?
it's a long list. Okay, so there is 20, and I'll tell them to you alphabetically, and then I'm going to tell you what I believe and what Katapult believes is the mother of all of them. Okay, adaptability, right? Because if you've anybody here a business owner in management, hey, Zach, how are you? Being adaptable, especially as an entrepreneur, is so valuable, because every single day something changes that you didn't anticipate. And if you can't go you can have a heart attack for exactly 2 minutes. That's about all the time you have. Then you got to adapt and move forward. Commitment. Commitment is huge, right? You guys were committed to coming here today. I appreciate it. I'm so committed to telling the world about these things because frankly, it's a little self-serving. I'm really tired working with people who haven't amplified these to a good extent. Communication was up there. Conflict resolution, huge one. I probably could have practiced that a little bit better with my partner today, but it was a joke, thing. But there are plenty of times out in the world, out in your personal life, if you're married, I'm unmarried, but conflict resolution, very important skill. Empathy, that was a great one. That was impressive. We never get empathy. Okay, focus, big. Difficult today with all the technology. I have to really play games with myself to make sure that I don't get distracted when I'm doing really high value work, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, or even high value fun. You don't get distracted, right? You're playing an awesome video game. You're involved in your sport, and you're in the middle of it. You're out in the world. You're watching an awesome movie. You're not thinking about anything else. But it's pretty easy to get distracted, and technology from that point of view is really tricky. The people, I'm 50, so the people my age and right around my demographic, cell phones weren't even like a remote thought, and we're distracted by them now too, which a lot of us hate to admit, but I'm comfortable saying it. So staying focused, really laser focused, something narrow, not easy. How am I doing on time? Good. Okay. Healthy lifestyle, which is great, because for me, very primary thing, sleep. Who here thinks they don't get enough sleep? I do. Okay, way too many people. That is, having a couple degrees in wellness and having been worked in the field, that is something that I implore you to find a different way. Don't skimp on that. I will skip fun stuff, and my stepson's in the room, so he lived with me. He knows. I was a dork. I used to have to get up at 4:30 in the morning for work. I'd be in bed at 8:30. It's summer. It's light out. Everyone's hanging out on the deck. I'm like, no way, man. I got to go down, because I know my performance is profoundly affected by not enough sleep. So that's one. And if anybody after the session wants, I'll give you my email address and stuff, and you want some help with it or a different way to think about it, some resources, I'm happy to give you that. But sleep primary. Anybody here in sales? Besides anybody who owns their own company? Okay, what do we all as salespeople, besides all this stuff, really need in spades? The ability to influence people. What we basically do is help, create a vision for people. What's this product or service about? Why do you need it? Here's why, you might want to consider buying it. Is anybody in this room married? And nobody gets the influence? Come on. That's huge. Or with kids. Integrity. That was the I word. I don't think I ever actually said it. Or maybe I did. But having integrity. Oh, yeah, data integrity. I did say it. Sorry. That second definition, I jumped the line on, because there are some very well-known people right now who have huge integrity in terms of consistency. It's just like a nightmarish consistency. So, if you're doing nothing nefarious, integrity is great. But integrity, how we all typically think of it is, and we have tweaked our definitions, because we do an assessment where it's a self-assessment. So when I give you guys this, do a self-assessment. Be honest with yourself and look at 2 of these skills where you think you could improve. But we include those in our assessments. We have to make sure everybody's operating on the same information. And then, scarier yet, and you might consider doing this, we ask people to get 360s from their bosses, from the people that report to them, from side to side, from your family, whoever you want, from your friends, anyone that you think will be honest with you. And I'll tell you the definition of integrity in a second. I'll put my finger on it so I don't forget. Because this is what seems to happen. High performers, come on in, buddy. High performers always rate themselves, not always, very often, in my experience with this, and we've only been around a year, so this is all like relatively new, relatively modestly. 7s, 8s, they have a sense, because they're high performers, that good is the enemy of best, right? Easiest way to say it. Mid-pack performers, I'm a 9, I'm a 9.5, I'm a 10. I've gotten 10s, and because to me 10 is unobtainium, I don't even think, Bill Gates is a 10, or I don't even follow in sports so much lately, but don't kill me for this. Tom Brady, well, he's a 10 in my mind, but I'm from Boston, and I'm a girl. So, but you know what I'm saying. So what happens is then the 360s go out, right? So this is life. You're awesome as can be in your own mind. You're a legend in your own mind. or you're like, and the 360s go out, and inevitably mid-pack performers get knocked down by the 360s, or I like to think of it as just brought back to earth. And high performers, people say, come on, you're not a 7.5. Like, I've worked with you for 3 years. You're at 9 all day long. So it's kind of like the great equalizer in our assessment. And there's other stuff too, but it's interesting. All right, integrity. The quality of being honest and having strong moral principles is definition 1. So, but it is huge in business and out in the world. Anybody ever have in their business or in their life somebody who you feel like violated integrity? I mean, it's devastating. And what really stinks about it, if you're the one that does it, and I'm sure I have, Carl, don't answer that, please. I'm sure I definitely have, is people will, this is such a sad reality about life. You can do millions and thousands of great things in your life, right? Thousands of great things. You always show up. You always do well. You always do one time you screw it up and people question your integrity, that's all they remember. And it takes such a long time, if ever, to crawl back from that. So as I caution you, when you make decisions out there, when you're asked to do stuff, self-reflect on where, am I being integral, or am I showing integrity with this? Because it really matters, and it's a very hard thing to undo. Optimism we got. Problem-solving skills, huge. And, I'm not going to say that no one's ever learned this stuff in school. I mean, obviously, we learned communication on some level, or we wouldn't be having this one-sided conversation, which I like to have you participate in whenever you feel like it. Don't wait for questions. Raise your hand if you think of something. But problem-solving is just giant. And there are actually problem-solving techniques. It's not just like, oh, let's figure this out. Anybody ever taken a class on problem-solving? Usually only engineers and lucky people, but it's such a valuable tool, and when you're exposed to it a little bit and you start using the tools, you don't even think of doing it anymore. But there's stuff like root cause analysis, probably people have heard of that. The 5 whys, which is one of my favorites, where somebody says like, Zach was late for school today. Well, why? Well, he got up late. Well, why? Well, he didn't get enough sleep last night. Well, why? Well, it turns out he's addicted to PlayStation. And then we know the actual problem. The problem is not that you showed up late today. The problem is you're addicted to PlayStation. Good news is I have someone you can talk to about that. I have lots of resources. Resilience, we came up with. Responsibility. The mother of all, in my mind, the 20 catapult skills, and possibly the linchpin of emotional intelligence, which all these in some way have a relationship to, self-awareness. And I'm just going to stop and let you absorb that.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Because I love this. What about judgment? Because that's missing, and for me, that's one of those key.
It is so key, and I think you're so right, and I want to talk to you after because you get this in such a big way. Are you a therapist?
No.
Okay. Well, you have a good sense of psychology. It's never too late. Look at me. So judgment is kind of like a byproduct of a bunch of these. We talked about it, but it's why we didn't put it in there. It's kind of, and we have I didn't want to really get into this, but I'll tell you for 2 seconds. We have a matrix that we put together, and it's actually really cool, and it's basically the interrelationship of these skills. So it shows that, like, to be focused, you also have to have resilience, and you also have to be committed, and you also have to be that type of thing. So judgment felt to us more like a byproduct, but I think it's a really great point. Like I said, it's not an exhaustive list, so this is more to just get yourselves thinking about the skills that you may want to hone out in the world, right? So that's, I would say, judgment, yeah, for sure. So self-awareness, the mother of all of this. So if you know how you operate as a person, right? You're very aware of your emotions and your thoughts and your behaviors, then you have the ability, and I didn't make this up, this is right out of the emotional intelligence model. You have the ability to self-regulate, right? You won't start screaming in the middle of a meeting, right? I still do sometimes. That's one of the ones I'm working on, Zach. He's on some committees with me. Keith, quiet. You will think about the effect you're having on other people. You'll understand when you're struggling with something, and you'll maybe even know when it's time to get help. So being aware of yourself is just so primary. We define it as an accurate appraisal. And part of being self-aware is being very honest with yourself. Accurate appraisal and understanding of your internal emotional states and preferences and the implications for your behaviors and their outcomes. Because I've had pretty good self-awareness for a long time because of a lot of work that I did kind of like earlier on in my life, my early 20s. Do I always have self-control? No. But I'm always aware when I'm either enriching someone's life or destroying it. My aspiration is to, only enrich it. But it's not that I'm not aware, which is a different thing. And I often think back, and I apologize to somebody just the other day for my behavior in a meeting, because I was aware that I was doing it, but I was so heightened that I couldn't manage myself, I couldn't control myself, and I didn't hit him that hard. But it was enough to where afterwards I thought, that wasn't the right behavior. And so I had to be honest with myself and aware of the fact that that was going to create maybe a potential problem for me. At least I didn't make him feel that good about, what happened, and I wanted to clean it up. So I'm not saying that.
It's okay.
I know. I'm working on these things, these are top of mind for me. Every single day I work with this stuff. Every single day I make myself name all 20. And I can't always remember them. It's really funny. And that's why I would say, take this and stick it somewhere. Every day look at it. Just every day look at it. Just have those words start being planted in your mind. Maybe even explore them a little bit more. There's a great, relatively free resource out there if you just want the basic. It's called Mind Tools. Anybody use Mind Tools? Fantastic. You only have to buy to the next level, but for just basics, they have assessments, they have everything. It's certainly a pull system. They're not going to push anything to you, but I really like that one for, if you want to just start looking at this. Self-confidence, we had. Self-control, I mentioned. Whenever I get 360s, that does come up. And 360s are and I like to think of it as enthusiasm, but apparently there's times where I could use a little more. It just goes to show you can work with this stuff all the time and still have work to do. Self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is an interesting one, and I actually didn't know the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence until I really started working with this stuff a lot. So, anybody know the difference? Or I'll explain it. Anybody want to take a guess? Hit me. Right, which is more self-esteem. Great. Self-confidence is really like belief in your ability, a feeling of trust in your abilities, capabilities, and judgments, as well as the belief that you can successfully complete day-to-day activities and challenges. You can have a lot of self-confidence in your abilities and still have some kind of deeper issues with your self-esteem around, do I really deserve this? Am I going to ask for what I need? That type of thing. So there's a distinction. I wouldn't even say it's subtle. There's some subtleties to it, but loving who you are, feeling really good about who you are, and deserving of the good things that you make happen or you get in life is different from feeling like you can do something. You might have great self-confidence in your math abilities, but you might not feel like you deserve to go out and meet a great person or whatever it would be. So there is a difference. I found it interesting. I couldn't guess either. Self-motivation. Dom, dom, dom. Giant, if you think you might want to be an entrepreneur, it's like, so you think you want to be an entrepreneur instead of a millionaire, which hopefully happens one after the other. If you are not self-motivated, forget it. Because every single day I have to wake up, I'm the boss, so I have to be like, hey boss, time to move your, boss. Rhymes with boss. And kind of like ours. And it is really hard sometimes. I mean, who in here, including me, struggles with self-motivation sometimes? We are all great at it when it's stuff we love to do. It's only really a big problem when it's like the stuff you really don't want to do that you have to get done. And, if I ever figure out the holy grail to self-motivation, I'll send y'all an email and fill you in. But there's lots of ways to amplify it, and that's part of assuming responsibility. If you kind of have to be self-motivated to be responsible. And so again, there's an interplay of all these things. Are we interested in this? We feeling self-motivated to go onto Mind Tools and get down? All of you look so bored. Please tell me you're not. Okay, good. You're just listening hard. Okay, once again, salespeople, anybody who owns a business that provides a service, maybe you would have thought of it more in the C's, service orientation. Out in the world, we think of it as customer service. Who has had an excellent customer service experience in the past 48 hours? I actually have. Miracle of miracles. How many people have had a bad customer service experience in the last month? Where you called, where you called or you emailed Verizon and they didn't answer your question, or you know what I mean? It can't just be the two of you that raise your hands. I've got to believe we've all had, the waiter stunk or the this or that. Well, for a business or for anything in life, and service orientation, we specifically didn't say customer service because I think it also applies in life as well, in your regular life. People come to your house, you might take their coat, you offer them a drink, you see what, you ask them how they are. That's good customer service in my house, right? We don't think of it that way, but it kind of is. You're going to do a favor for somebody. You're going to do it half-assed. Hopefully not. You're going to give them good customer service as their friend. So it's kind of like service orientation. And did anybody go to Steve Summers' talk a couple nights ago up at Beers Hall, which took me a long time to find, incidentally. And I love this campus. He was, he owns a company. He talked about customer service and the importance of that. He told a story about when he owns a $100 million company around here, a food extract and what do you call that? Flavors and Scents. Thank you, God. Company. And he talked about when he was 10 years old, he had a paper route, and his mom came home from somewhere someday and said, I met Mrs. Jones, and she said you were the best paper boy she ever had. So obviously he was providing great customer service, and he was so proud of it. And he said today, even at, however old Steve is, a little bit older than me, when they provide good customer service, it still makes him feel, that really good feeling like the 10-year-old kid when he heard he was doing a great job. So when you really master service orientation, you'll feel bad when you don't provide it. That's kind of how I gauge it. If I don't think I really did a good enough job for somebody, you feel it. Last one, number 20. Nobody guessed it. Okay, we're going to try. Starts with a T. Okay. No, I don't want to say B did a better job than A because we didn't really say?
Teamwork.
Team player, being a team player. Thank you. Guess comes through. This is great. So that's really big. And it's big in your regular life, and it's big in your work life. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't be individuals, because that's really, really important. We don't have authenticity as a skill, but I really believe in, as much as you can, being your authentic self, assuming that's an authentic self we all want to deal with, but let's assume it is. Being a team player is an interesting thing, because now I've worked with leaders as team players. I've worked with people who are in relatively big leadership positions, and funny enough, they fancy themselves a 9, and when they get the 360 back, their team rates them a 6. And so they're like, oh, what happened? Like, I feel like I'm a really great team player. And when we unpack it, they're not as good of a team player as they thought. So you can be a leader and be a team player at the same time. There's just some finesse that's required there. But who's ever been on a team where some of the people aren't being team players? Like, how awful does that make being on a team? Like, you rowing in the same direction is just so incredibly valuable when you're trying to get somewhere, because when several people are backpedaling, it's just, I like to use the river reference here in the Poconos. It's really just so challenging. And in an organization, if in your organizational culture, you allow disruptions in teams, it can polarize your organization very well. Well, look at our government right now is all I'll say. I don't think we're functioning that well as a team. Even the teams within the team are polarized, and it's certainly not helping us accomplish things that we really need to accomplish.